This right here on the screen behind me, this is a giant replica of an idol to Athena, the Greek goddess Athena, that sits in a replica of the Greek Parthenon in the very heart of Nashville, Tennessee.
You walk up and look in, your mind goes down this line, your eyes go down this line, and they meet at the statue.
Yeah.
You are drawn into the statue because the columns don't go from floor to ceiling.
There's an awful lot of occult symbolism in your world. Here behind me, this on her shield is the face of Medusa with all the serpents coming out, peeking straight out at you. We're going to take a look at that. But in your world right now today, there is an awful lot of occult symbolism. Cult, some call secret society symbolism in your world today. Here in the form of a enormous statue to the Greek goddess Athena.
That little creature is 6 foot 4 inches tall. Hey, young man, you about 6'4"?
6'5".
That little creature is as tall as you are, 6'4". I'm talking about the little one. The little creature in her hand right there, 6'4".
Now I'd like to, if I may, draw your attention to this angel-looking character in our replica of a Greek idol of Athena's hand right here, this angel-looking character right here. Now, in the ancient world, whether you lived in Egypt or Babylon or at the time of the Greeks or Romans, you would bring homage, you would pay homage to the gods. You saw these gods as very real.
But now you know the reason it draws you in.
Yeah, and that is nearly 7 feet tall.
6'4". That little creature is 6'4". How tall is that man?
Very real, right on the other side of reality, in another dimension kind of real. Maybe as close as the air between your fingers real. But you would pay homage to those gods. What's funny to me is that in this modern age, you may still be paying homage to those gods. This angel-looking character in the hand right here is none other than the ancient goddess Nike, of course. The goddess of athletics. Perhaps we're still throwing incense on the fire to the ancient gods. The checkmark symbol right there is said to be Nike's wing right there. The magical Disney character Tinkerbell is also said to have been inspired by the Greek goddess Nike. We really have not actually left those ancient mythologies, if they be that, of old. Disney oftentimes seems to have an awful lot of mystical white witch, black witch in it, doesn't it? The Greeks believed in many monsters and strange creatures. One such monster is the griffin. It had the head and wings of an eagle, the tail of a lion. In its function, it was a guardian of treasure, like a dragon is a guardian of treasure, that made griffins an appropriate figure for the four corners of the Parthenon's roof. So when you see gargoyles on the top of the roof, that comes from these guys here, the griffins. A lot of people probably didn't even know this thing existed. We did a full walkthrough of it, and I wanted to go through. They did a very good job of holding to much of the ancient symbolism. Now, what the Parthenon is a temple on the Athenian Acropolis in Greece that is dedicated. This is its crumbling remains over here on the side. In fact, people actually travel from Greece to Nashville to come look at the replica that they built there. This is what the Greek Parthenon would have looked like in Athens. And the temple is dedicated, so to the Greeks, this would have been dedicated to the goddess Athena, who would have been the daughter of Zeus. And we're just going to walk up. This is my first walk-in inside of this replica of a Greek temple. The Greek Parthenon is often claimed to be a symbol of ancient Greece and also a symbol of democracy and Western civilization. You'll notice that your universities, you have fraternities and sororities. These come from the Greeks.
So here are the only exact replica anywhere in the world of the ancient Parthenon.
Okay.
The giant steps are giant for what reason? Because when you pick your knee up that high, Your head goes down and you are bowing to the goddess. The mathematics of the step. Not the part you put your foot on, but the other part.
Right.
The slope is a number, and that's the number where your head goes down. You're forced to bow to their goddess.
Okay. A lot of that architecture, particularly these pillars that are on the outside of the building, sort of brought me to think about architecture from ancient Egypt. Now, here on this side, we have one of these fancy corrugated pillars that we see in the time of the Romans and the Greeks, and on both government and religious buildings, even of this modern age, we copied both the Romans and the Greeks in a great many of ways. These are often referred to as wisdom pillars right here.
So look at the empty space.
Okay.
You might have to turn around and get that last column row at the end down there. What I'm saying is the negative space, the empty space, the sky and everything under the sky. What shape do you see?
I don't know.
Well, I'm saying you will in a minute. It's fun for me. I've been giving this tour 25 years. The question is, what shape is at the end of the column row?
Another column.
Well, it's like this.
No, maybe something you put flowers in.
Oh, it's a vase.
Oh, a vase,
You
yeah.
see it, a vase, a Grecian urn.
Yeah.
It's not really there. That's an optical illusion.
Now, the god of wisdom to the Egyptians, and then later in the uppity-up clubhouses of both the Romans and the Greeks, and later the higher echelons of perhaps your world today, might be this god right here, the god Thoth, the god of writing and wisdom to the Egyptians. Now, these type of pillars here that many associate with wisdom or governmental authority or power or government, well, they remind me strikingly of these pillars that are at the step pyramid complex in ancient Egypt. This is credited as being the first pyramid. I'm going to humbly submit that to your hands. But no matter the case, these pillars first probably appear, so we copied from the Romans copied from the Greeks copied from the Egyptians, and these pillars first sort of appear right there at that step pyramid, which was built by this unusual vizier named Imhotep, who many believe, myself included, was very, very likely the biblical Joseph. This is one of the most mammoth complexes that was ever built in the ancient world, particularly at that time. There was nothing in the world like it, short of Nimrod's Tower of Babel. Right here is the front entrance to that step pyramid complex. There's the step pyramid right here. And on this side are what many believe are enormous grain pits. There's also more tunneling underneath this complex, more complexity of tunneling than any known pyramid in the entire world. This up here at the top, just to give you perspective, these are little bitty people on top of what are believed are these enormous grain pits. Where I'm going with that is though many of these secret-y clubhouses they do what they always do. Take things that, in this case, God himself probably had a very strong hand in, and I can make a great case for that. And they take it and they sort of twist it, just like two different paths, light and dark. Now, if that be true, that this complex was built by Joseph, then that would mean that even those very pillars that would later be affiliated with pagan gods actually came from a biblical source, in this case, Joseph. More than this, it would mean that even the pyramid, given a pagan and occult meaning in this modern age, would have its origin in the biblical Joseph. Just going to submit that to your hands. But for the purpose of this moment, let's go in the direction of those witchy, secrety little clubhouses. And by the way, in the ancient world, they likened Imhotep, who built that complex with those pillars, to their god of wisdom, Thoth. In other words, they would have been likening Joseph, the biblical Joseph, to the greatest God of wisdom that they had in Egypt. But let's go in the direction to the very heart of the pagan temples.
But come on, let's go in.
Okay, yeah, that sounds great.
You know what's in here?
No, not yet.
Oh, that's more fun for me.
Okay.
I've been doing this tour for 25 years.
Really?
It is so much more fun if you don't know.
Okay.
Wait till you see. Come on, this way.
All right. Now this Greek Parthenon, it is, I want to read you this line down here. It's often claimed to be a symbol of ancient Greece, the Parthenon over here. And it's also a symbol of democracy and Western civilization. So the founding fathers of this nation, just like you have these ancient empires, you had Babylon, you had ancient Egypt, you had the Persians, you had the Greeks, you had the Romans, and they would have viewed this, the founding fathers of this land, who dedicated this land to the Lord. They would have viewed this as the coming of the new empire, a new empire of Western civilization and democracy. And they wanted to grab the good parts out of that. And just like all of those empires had developments, each one in its own accord. The Egyptians, for example, they're known for their pyramids. They're just simply known for their pyramids. And in this new empire, called the United States, a somewhat fledgling empire at that time, but one taking great victories, because there were great men of prayer in this land, in this place, beginning with your first president, George Washington. Well, what they wanted to bring together here in Tennessee, the Tennessee Centennial Exposition of 1897, they were doing a celebration for the 100th anniversary of Tennessee entering the Union, is what they were doing.
So I had the best gig in town, let me tell you that. But look at this.
Okay.
This is what it looked like in 1897.
Right.
Can you imagine if you've never seen electricity, this is what you see. People didn't understand electricity. You know, it's just beyond their comprehension. So this is 1897, the Tennessee Centennial Celebration.
Here's that image that he's showing us right there as you enter that Parthenon building. Here's this original photograph taken in 1897. Here's the Parthenon as it was at that time. Your founding fathers of this United States would have viewed, see, they did a pyramid and light bulbs here. It would have been mesmerizing in its hour and something people had not seen before. But more than this, the way that they would have viewed this is that this was an empire being birthed. This United States was an empire being birthed equal to or greater than the pyramids of ancient Egypt. And I would also note that it was just the building at that time, a building representing to them democracy and Western civilization that was being birthed at the very heart of this. There was no 42-foot tall statue or idol to Athena inside that building. It was just a building representing democracy and an empire being birthed greater than the grandest of pyramids. The statue to Athena would not go inside that building until 1990.
So who would have built this? It's the birthday party of the state.
Oh, and they did a pyramid.
So who would have built the pyramid?
I'm not sure.
What city in Tennessee? What city in Tennessee? Memphis, Tennessee. They have one now.
A lot of the cities are named after Egyptian sites.
This is the sister city of Memphis.
Tennessee is very well known for President Andrew Jackson. He lived right outside of Nashville, Tennessee, and his home is called the Hermitage. In fact, his home looks very much like the Greek Parthenon, and it's clear from the interior of the home, including the wallpapers, that Andrew Jackson, he was a very secular man, is what he was. But he certainly envisioned this, if you just look at the walls of his home, as the come-all be-all, the coming empire, greater than that of both the Romans and the Greeks, is how Andrew probably would have envisioned this empire that was becoming.
Here we have a copy of Andrew Jackson's home.
Right,
the Hermitage.
Jackson's home. Okay, so where was this at?
It's in Hermitage.
Okay, so
it's
this is
the copy of the Hermitage on these grounds in 1897. The first building complete, the woman's building.
Right.
He's really popular around here.
Yes, he is.
So Andrew Jackson's home with a little Parthenon on top. So kind of fun and games.
Okay, I see.
Fun and games, a little Parthenon on top.
George Washington was the first president of the United States. He had no political party. Boy, wouldn't it be nice to go back to that. Andrew Jackson was the 7th president of the United States and the founder of what we today call the Democrat Party. Now, the reason that party was founded, according to the museums out there in Nashville, the Andrew Jackson museums and the museum in his Hermitage, is in his election, the sort of the banksters of his age, or the elites of his age, had cheated him out of his election. So it was believed by the common people that which was the truth, that he was cheated out of his rightful election, as he was he was the people's president. When it came time for the next election, after he had been cheated out of the presidency, the voter turnout literally doubled, and it was impossible to out-cheat how many people came and voted for Andrew Jackson the second time around. But the people really loved Andrew Jackson. In fact, he was called the people's president. The people cried out for Andrew Jackson. And he came back and he defeated the elites of that hour. He's well known for going head-to-head with the banksters of that age, and actually one of the few in history taking a victory against them. But within the hours, these were dangerous men that founded this nation. George Washington was a man that would go and he would pray before the Lord, and he would say, "Lord, if you just give me another day, I will hand freedom to these men." Andrew Jackson carried on, even as a secular man, he carried on that torch that was handed to him through the hands of George Washington. But one of the most powerful things that would take root from this United States and go forth, that would really spring up here, would be the most powerful thing that's ever existed in the history of the world: the medias.
And here we have the Vanity Fair, the amusement park area.
Yeah, the Vanity Fair. That's
it's an English thing, but it's all about it's like Opryland, like Disney World.
Yeah, but that's a magazine we have today, isn't it?
Correct. Everything copied from the Greeks as we go upstairs. But yeah, that's what this is. Okay, yeah. It's an English thing.
And of course, the birth of movies and motion pictures.
Right. It's called 1897.
Shooting the Chutes.
And here's Mr. Edison's Mirage. So a movie theater, the first movie. You can come here and watch a movie. Edison didn't come.
Oh, this was the first movie theater, or one of them.
Correct. This is Thomas Edison's Mirage.
Now, many of these incredible things that had never existed in the history of the world before, well, they're all kind of, the electric lights back there on the pyramid, they're kind of like fire. You can either do light or dark with it. And with a fire, you can either cook food or you can burn someone at the stake. But identical to every empire before it, you have the darkness that begins to slither in, and it always begins with a little bit, and then a little more, and then finally it's a whole lot.
And here's a haunted house. So in this restaurant, you have your dinner served on a coffin top table.
Right.
And the chandelier would be skull and crossbones.
On this, and this was right next to this.
All of this is a centennial celebration. So it's a haunted house. You pay your money. There's a ticket booth. You go in and get scared.
Go in and get scared while you're having dinner.
Yeah, the top table.
Dante's Inferno. That's what it says. Dante's Inferno.
It's all about that. It's all about
night and morning, and the food came on coffins, and you had the skull and crossbones over
the chandelier. Correct.
The chandeliers of the dinner tables. Now, what happens if we go upstairs and we head towards our enormous idol here of Athena? And by the way, the little goddess Nike in her hand is just a smidgen over 6 feet tall. But what happens if we head towards our idol of Athena here? And by the way, I'm very thankful to the city of Nashville for putting together these displays. They actually make great demonstration materials and give good examples of what these temples would have been like in their day. They went to great lengths for that. But in our world, if we sort of leave our foundations, our solid ground, and we head towards the idols.
So out pops, born of Zeus's head, Athena. Yeah. Fully grown in all of her armor.
This is a statue of the Greek god Zeus right here. To the Romans, it would be Jupiter. In his hand, he's got a scepter. By his side, he's got an eagle. And on this side, once again, we've got the goddess Nike in his hand. Athena is, what he's expressing to you is that Athena is born from a man. She's born directly from the Greek god Zeus.
I told you men made these myths up. Like in the other room, the same here. They skip motherhood. This is how a man can have a child. You have to remember too, they didn't have cable TV.
Here's a replica of many of the Greek pantheon of gods. And I'm going to be making the case here in just a couple of minutes that this pantheon of gods on top is going to really kind of nicely tie into what you might call your alien or UFO stuff, your spooky kind of witchy stuff, or your things that go bump in the night, this pantheon that's up here. And that the Greeks, they really were copying things that go all the way back to the very days of Nimrod and to ancient Sumer and ancient Akkad. These are just a version of them that became more mythological over time. This is classical artwork that I've got on the screen behind me. To the Greeks, Zeus would be sort of the chief of their pantheon of gods. Zeus would be called Jupiter to the Romans. These graphics that I've got behind me actually come from our Genesis series that we've done. I think there's 7 or 8 of those at this point. We walk heavily through all of this stuff, guys, ties all the way back to the days of Nimrod and before. In the Vav part 1 and 2, we go back and we break down. So all of these things that were believed at the time of the Greeks and the Romans, even in their secrety little backroom clubhouses, where they did some pretty hardcore stuff. Hardcore stuff that may go on even to this very day. It stretches all the way back to the days of Gilgamesh. They're walking you right through it on all of these rocks. And all of those Babylonian gods get directly plugged in to what the Pharaoh believed at the very time of the Exodus. Every one of the plagues is one of the gods of Egypt being challenged. It's one of the best films that we've ever done, right there on the screen, A God in a Nutshell. In their belief structure, they were worshiping, here's what they were doing. They were worshiping the Creator. They were worshiping the creation as opposed to the Creator. Each of the planets, they would have called the planets wandering stars, is what they would have called them. The 7th planet, or Uranus, and it's already kind of an offensive name right there, represented the Creator God. Now, if you go all the way back to the time of Gilgamesh, to the Akkadians, Uranus, or the 7th planet, that would have been Anu. To the Sumerians, it would have been the god On. But in this depiction behind me, same characters as in those times, just repackaged over and over and over again until you come to these depictions here. Right here on this side, we have Saturn, or the 6th planet, or Satan, standing right here, and he's castrating his father, his creator. This would also be a depiction of the Enki if you went all the way back to the very beginning. Saturn, the 6th planet, this is literally a depiction of Satan castrating the father or the creator of all life. That's what's being expressed in this classical artwork. Now, with the blood, he's going to make the Titans. These stories sounding familiar. Now, the chief of these is going to be Zeus, these titans that are going to be created with the blood. So Satan is going to birth his own child, and that's going to be Zeus to the Greeks, Jupiter to the Romans, or if we go all the way back in time to the days of Gilgamesh, right on these rocks, it would be Tammuz. Now here's what I'm going to set forth for you, because I'm going to walk you through right there while we're standing at the Parthenon. They've got a display of all of the different gods. I'm going to walk you through just a couple of them in that pantheon, and I make no judgment over any of it. I'm submitting to you. Does it look like that these mythologies that many people actually chuckle at, well, does it look like these are sort of manifesting in many ways in your world right now, today? And right here, what we see seated is we see the Greek god Zeus sitting in his chair right here. This is the Supremo. He's at the pinnacle of the triangle coming up. The Greek god Zeus sitting right here. He is the come-all, be-all of the Greek pantheon of gods. Right next to him, we see Athena. So we see this one here with a hammer, the precursor to Thor that you may see in movies. And Zeus has inside of him, he has the embodiment of a woman is inside of him. This is interesting symbolism. In the Greeks, you find a lot of the highest form of love would be between a man and a man. And in this imagery here, he's got a pounding headache. This is actually where you get the term pounding headache from. And he's going to be hit on the head with a hammer. This is going to crack his head open, and he's going to give birth. So this is Greek imagery of a man giving birth, is what this actually is. And from him is going to come this winged character who's going to be Athena. So let's dive directly into our giant goddess Athena.
And what kind of crown is this?
It's an Olympic crown.
It's what you won in the Olympics. You didn't get a gold medal, but you got the laurel wreath. So it what you won in the ancient Olympics. Hey, one more thing about Nike or Nikkei. This is Tinkerbell.
Now Athena, and there's the iron behind me, Athena is the goddess of war. Athena is the ancient Greek goddess associated with wisdom and warfare. She was later known as the Roman goddess Minerva. The Parthenon of Athens is dedicated to her, to Athena. Her major symbols, and this is what I'm getting to, her major symbols are owls, olive trees, and snakes. He's got a spear.
The goddess of winged victory.
Yeah.
Goddess of winged victory. She should know with those shoes on. The goddess of winged victory. Who is it?
Nike.
It is Nike or Nikkei. She has the wing, the swoosh, and here it is. Yeah. It is the tip of this wing. That's what she wears on
swoosh.
That's what you have at home on your jacket or your socks. You wear those socks to be victorious, and it must work. Tiger Woods, victorious. Well, not so much lately. Michael Jordan, victorious. How victorious has Nike been with that little marketing thing that they do?
This up here on this coin is one of the symbols of Athena. I'd like you to notice it's an owl. Owls are often recognized as a symbol of wisdom. Sometimes they're printed on your books. And funny enough, a lot of people, when they had these alien abduction experiences, they will remember having seen owls. And what you're dealing here with Greek mythology is characters oftentimes that come out of this other dimension of gods and goddesses. In fact, on the top of their temples, they'll be painting the gods and goddesses of the Greeks sort of floating around in the clouds. But the owl sits up in it's a night creature that sits quietly up waiting for its prey to swoop down and to grab its prey by its clutches. Is part of the symbolism of the owl.
It's all an optical illusion. So when we think about Phidias, there was a pool of water here.
Yes.
So you had a reflecting
pool. So if you came in there
the
was
ancient
a
world,
correct
correct.
Here.
You had a
So
reflection, exactly
you had
right.
this statue reflecting in the water
From this door.
Got it.
That was the presentation in 430 BC.
It's worthy of note what he's trying to tell you here. So in the actual ancient Parthenon, where this idol would have been, in front of the idol, there would have been an enormous pool of water as you entered the doorway. So you would have seen the idol standing upright, and you would have seen it also in the reflection pool below. As above, so below. Here behind me on the screen, we've got the obelisk that we find at Washington National Monument. So the obelisk is standing upright, and we see the reflection of the obelisk pointing downwards in the reflection pool below. A lot of DC is very well established to have been laid out by the orders such as the Freemasons. One of the heroes of these kind of orders, hero in Hollywood and also in this modern music age, would be Aleister Crowley, who believed that he spoke to a dimensional being that he called Lamb. In fact, he's quoted as stating, today they call them angels and demons, tomorrow they will call them something else. An obelisk is not just a piece of architecture, it's actually a statement. An obelisk represents a male phallic symbol, is what it represented in the ancient world, but not just any male phallic symbol. It is a tie-in to their god of the dead, Osiris, and also to the sun god Ra, is what they would have believed. This line of as above, so below has its origin, at least in this modern era, in a belief of these emerald tablets of Thoth. Many of the secret societies, or esoteric, that's a fancy way of saying occult societies, believe that there were these emerald tablets of Thoth that were found in the pyramids out there in Egypt and Giza. And that these tablets were written by Thoth, authored as Hermes the Thrice Great. It also goes on to state that he lived 3,600 years, I believe. So notice the 3 and the 6s. Hermes the Thrice Great, a legendary Hellenistic combination of the Greek god Hermes and the ancient god, Egyptian god of wisdom, Thoth, like the artifact that I have, or the replica of the artifact that I have in my hand. In fact, in your modern textbooks, it draws a lot from these ancient occult beliefs. Much of your sciences and your history is drawn, more than many people know, probably more than even those societies know, comes from a lot of ancient occult beliefs. A reflection pool, well, if it's got an idol right in front of it, so the reflection of the idol will be in the shallow water in front of the idol. Here behind me on the screen I have Sir John Dee. He was the head intelligence officer under Queen Elizabeth for the British Empire. That's quite a title. On his intelligence work, he would sit in the top of the castle and he would do what's called scrying. In fact, he's commonly credited with popularizing what we know today as the crystal ball. Now, scrying is you would look in a pool of water, Dee would look in a pool of water, and he was talking to the spirits, was the intelligence work he was doing. If that was intelligence work back then, do you think they still do that as intelligence work now? I'm going to back out of that subject. This might be termed in a Disney-ish fashion as through the looking glass. What I have behind me on the screen, this is an old Halloween ad that we have here. Reads on the bottom, on Halloween, look in the glass, your future husband's face will pass. Right over here we have a witch's shadow in the back of the image. These concepts are not new, and they draw all the way backwards to both Babylonian and Egyptian occult, is how he was getting his intelligence. At the beginning of it, Dee was stating that he was communicating with angels. By the end of it, he was repeatedly crying out, these things are not angels, they are demons. I had the kind of alienish looking critters peering in from the sides of the screen because, in my humble opinion, in doing this quite a lot of years, if it's not a laser deception taking place in the skies or some kind of a military thing, if you actually are dealing with something otherworldly, well, the UFO phenomenon from the very get-go was that you had something appearing and disappearing in the skies. So the question really would become, where is it when you don't see it? My humble opinion would be that the otherworldly things in the skies are probably the same voice talking as the otherworldly voice coming right through the Ouija board. Taking this a stage further, the actual messaging is even the sciencey sounding messaging sometimes. With the alien stuff, that's a sciencey word. They would have in that time called them spirits or demons. Right here on the back of the screen, I have the infamous character Enki, the Sumerian or Akkadian. This comes from an Akkadian tablet behind me. He's coming from these dimensional wavy lines. I want you to notice the waters or the fish in those wavy lines. The Egyptians, for example, believed that, well, that up in the skies there were these kind of celestial waters. What you've got right here, these boats with the gods in them, and they're navigating the celestial waters, the kind of dimensional construct of our reality. This is how they imagined or felt it was. I'm just going to lay that in your hands. But returning us back over here, this on the screen, this is Enki. And he's stepping on out of these dimensional waters. They've even got little fishes drawn on them. Top of his head, he's got his little witch's hat, his little Enki witch's hat on. Here he's got his crow, his falcon, his raven that's guiding the way. Right over here we're going to have Inanna, and we're going to have our first sun god, Utu, emerging forth between the mountains here. We actually cover this quite a bit in the Genesis series, particularly Evolve 1 and Evolve 2. But this is Enki. It says even the devil himself appears as an angel of light. Now, if I hop over to some of these ancient writings, like these little replicas of tablets in my hand, these come from what are called the Enuma Elish. Well, if I look at documents that have Enki and Enlil on them, Enki would be like the Enki good cop, Enlil bad cop kind of a situation, or the Baphomet, the masculine and the feminine to seduce you in, and the masculine to say, I've got you. Good cop, bad cop. Well, Enlil the entire time, all the way back to any of these ancient rocks, he's screaming the entire time, it's overpopulated, we got to fix it, I'm too crowded up in here, man, we got to do some sacrifice. That's just what he's screaming ever since the beginning. They're also telling you that there's problems with the climate and the weather in these rocks and stones from the ancient world. You couldn't make this up. So your science and the occult kind of come together, and that's whether the people teaching it to you know it or not, that the spirit behind it is very similar, almost a theological belief behind it. But the naming conventions, even in your medias and your music, well, right here, well, these are replicas of tablets from what is called the, well, right up here, the Enuma Elish. Enuma Elish, does that name sound familiar? Where have I heard that before? In fact, this comes from tablet 3 right here. Now, I'd like to notate that on this set of tablets, Tiamat would be the great serpent goddess. Here in my hand, a little replica of an idol thereof. These come from around what are known as the eye temples, by the way. It's an interesting study. Tiamat, the great serpent god or goddess, Mother Gaia goddess. Then we come down here to Anu, who is going to be the father of the Anunnaki, the Titans, or the heroes of old, the gods to the Greeks. This is literally the precursor to all of these god and belief structures. These weren't just mythologies to them. These were literal events and literal gods and literal mythologies, just like, or literal religious beliefs. These were the gods they were honoring. That's what they were doing. Well, let's take a look further. So Anshar opened his mouth, and unto, Gaga. In the Enuma Elish, we're speaking unto Gaga. And what does Gaga do? Well, it's a minister. He spake the word, O Gaga, thou minister that rejoiceth my spirit. None of these things, in my humble opinion, are new. And the alien occult stuff is the same thing as much of your science stuff. And I wouldn't be surprised if that's where a lot of it, from one side of something, is wanting to link up to. But speaking of the Enki and the Tiamat and the Namu and the great serpent goddess, let me take us back. So these two obelisks are in the heart of the Karnak temple. This is one of the largest masonry works in the entire world, in the entire ancient world. In fact, it's called the Temple of a Million Years. And most all of your architecture, the architecture done by the Romans and the Greeks and even the Egyptians and the Babylonians is beautiful. It's absolutely stunning in many cases. In fact, it's from the Greeks and the Romans, and more specifically credited to the Greeks, that you get things like democracy, which in and of itself is almost a gift from the Lord, until you cover it with all sorts of symbolism. I mean, these stoneworks are mesmerizing. They're beautiful to look at, but they're covered with symbolism or graffiti. So I'd like to take a look at just some of this symbolism. So on the base of many of these obelisks that we saw, and by the way, I felt like it was the Lord that put on my spirit to do this Exodus set at this time. And also, well, let's look at some of these symbols. So at the base of many of these obelisks, you have a serpent, for whatever cause. Whatever cause. That's what they thought. This is what needs to be importantly put at the base of our obelisk. Now on this one over here, we've got the eye, or the eye, and we'll get to that in just a second. Would come from Babylon, where we get Nimrod. Now, of course, prior to Nimrod, where you would get the inspiration for building any of this stuff, well, you had Noah and yet his 3 sons. And from a family like that, you'd literally expect to find building projects that mesmerize and amaze us. But Nimrod, the Dark Lord, our first brick mason, if you will, but it wasn't just building a piece of architecture. He specifically tells us what he was building. He was building a gateway to the gods. More specifically, he wanted to shake his fist at the God of all life. That's why he's today called Nimrod. And the tower that he built is called Babel, which today means gibberish. Here behind me are these obelisks once again. Now, in the story of the Exodus, the serpent right here, this is a serpent goddess. This is one of the oldest forms of worship, is the serpent. The base of some of these, or actually quite a lot of these obelisks, there is a serpent. That's just what they thought to put. Now when Moses and Aaron went in before the Pharaoh, this wasn't one of the plagues, this was a message. Took the staff and they threw it down and it became a serpent. So the story of the Exodus begins with a message to the serpent, to the old snake, is what it begins with. In fact, every god of the Exodus, every plague of the Exodus is one of the gods that the Egyptians believed in. This was their theology. Had God just saved the Hebrews, they wouldn't have known what it was to be saved. That's an important thing to know. How dark would it have been? It got pretty dark. See, they would have never known that. They would have always taken it for granted, what it was to be saved. On the other end of it, God did this for the Egyptians as well. See, had you just saved the Hebrews out of there, the Egyptians still, they would have clung to all of those gods. We have all these gods today, all these idols, and we don't even know it. But these were their idols, their gods. And one by one they were being challenged. They were the very weapon against them, their own gods, all the way through the Exodus. See, by the end of the Exodus story, you never could have told an Egyptian that the serpent was worthless. They would have been angry. Oh, they would have been more than angry. You couldn't have told them that any of their gods, they would have stoned you in the street. They were walking through witnessing the worthlessness of all of their idols. So here on these obelisks behind me, they start with the serpent. This is during the 18th dynasty, by the way. In our Exodus film, that's very important, where the heart of where these obelisks sit. Now, how about this symbol right here? Surely you've seen this one before. These symbols all sort of go together. This symbol can be found coincidentally within a pyramid on the back of your dollar bill. Right here, I have my eye, or my ion. And down here I have my serpent. The guide out there standing at this particular obelisk told me that it's to see into another dimension is what they meant by it. That's what he believed. But I'm going to read you Matthew 6, beginning in verse 22. The light of the body is the eye. The eye is the light of the body. If therefore thine eye be single, if thine eye be healthy, if it be full, then thy whole body shall be full of light. You won't be blind. That's a real gift not to be blind. But 23, but if thine eye be evil, and that literally means ayin ra, the ayin ra, right here. That's where you get that term from. If thine eye be evil, like the ayin ra, then thine whole body shall be full of darkness. If therefore the light that is in thee be darkness, then how great is that darkness?
Walt Disney's no different. Everyone's copied the Greeks. Here's the owl on your earring. That is Athena's animal, the owl. She's the goddess of wisdom or knowledge, as you point out. Have you ever seen that in Walt Disney? Wisdom, knowledge, the wise old owl. All of that is copied.
In short, a reflection pool, as you would have originally had in front of this giant idol to Athena or an idol to Zeus, but this particular idol here in the ancient world would have been right here in front of the idol, so you would see the idol above and below in the shallow waters, the reflection pool below. And this would have been for the aristocrats of that hour. In fact, the secret societies that you have today largely draw from, were perfected by both the Greeks and the Romans. And they were drawing from Egyptian, Babylonian, and even before that, Sumerian practices, going all the way back. In the case of the Freemasons, you're going all the way back to the first Mason, who would be Nimrod. So the idol standing there, reflecting down in the pool below, with the torchlight on both sides, it would be having the drink and the pharmakia, the drug, the black magic sex party, maybe occasionally a little ritual sacrifice, otherwise called murder. Most all of these strange beliefs and practices of gods, giants, and demons are going to find their origin in the occult back at the events of Mount Hermon, where the fallen angels made entrance in both Genesis 6 as well as in Enoch 6. Here behind me on the screen is what's known as Pan's Grotto. It's at the very base of Mount Hermon. It's where both Greeks and especially the Romans, the uppity-ups of that time, would come in, and they did hardcore human sacrifice, child sacrifice. That has a very long history. But they would do it in the mouth of this cave here that looks a lot like the mouth of the devil. This is an artist's rendering here of what that grotto, Pan's Grotto area, very likely looked like at that time. It would have had, well, a Greek or Roman style building looking very much like the Parthenon right in front of the cave. They would make determinations on whether Pan and the other gods were happy by how the blood would run out into the streams below. On this side, you would have a temple to Zeus. Zeus is the father of Athena, whose idol we've been looking at. The occult has a lot of dress up and a lot of mask wearing historically. This on the back screen. This is a mask that was discovered right out there in Israel, not far from Mount Hermon. This is a mask of the god Pan, the horned god Pan. On this side over here, I have the modern day Baphomet. The Baphomet is both masculine and feminine. The feminine to lure you in, and the masculine to say, I've got you, once it's drawn you in. It has the serpents, all of the spiritual entities in the occult at their most basic form are going to be reptilian, a lot of snakes at the base. This is what's coming up from the pants, where the private area would be, on our goat-headed Baphomet. At a temple like this, quite literally going into that mouth of the devil or Pan's Grotto on the inside while doing the ritual, the sacrifice, the drug, the drink, and the god Pan is a god of lust and sexuality. The waters would get excited with the demons. And in the waters below, as the strong drink and drug kick in and the ripples come over the image, the idol might begin to come to life and a new world appear in those waters below.
Tongues out, she's always dead. Snakes for hair. Medusa.
I know that the audio is a little jumbled here. What he's explaining is the symbolism of Medusa and all these serpents coming out of the head, and also the serpents he's going to point out on the wristbands of Athena, as well as the belt and the giant Gordian serpent right there by the shield.
Well, you know, the Greeks shield. The shield, that's the mirror. You know, the Greeks taught by asking a question. That's right. The shield, because it's a mirror, that's what he uses to kill the monster, the Gargon, and that's why she gets the bloody head. But there's snakes everywhere, the wrist, the belt. The large snake represents the Athenian people. She is protecting the snake. She was the protector of Athens. They loved and worshipped the snake.
But Athena, lo and behold, is just really the next stage in a very long line of these serpent goddesses going all the way back to the beginning. That's a little idol of a serpent goddess at the top right up here. On this side I have Nua. So you're going to find in China, you're going to find the legend of Nua, like Noah and Fushi. They kind of got it tangled up and backwards. They were going to survive the global flood. That is a big snake.
They identify with the snake. First of all, they thought that they came from that very earth. They hadn't moved there from somewhere else. And then when a snake sheds its skin, what is that called when a snake sheds its skin? It's molting. They saw that as a rebirth.
Right here I have Nua, this serpent goddess right here. You may recognize that name, Nua and Fushi. Nua, like Noah. These are actually the characters in Chinese legend that survived the global flood, just like Noah. But interestingly enough, just as you see with the Baphomet and these other, the reversal of roles between male and female. So Nua and Fushi, so Nua is actually the female in that legend. They've got that reversed, and Noah has also become not only a female but a serpent goddess. Right over here, of course, I have a Naga serpent deity sitting right here on the screen, and of course the infamous Inanna, seen right here. She's got her little wings on, just like Athena has her wings. She's got 6 bow and arrows in her back. Interesting number. She's coming up from Utu. This is your first sun god. This is actually an interesting study. I would highly recommend our films Evolve 1 and Evolve 2 that we stream over at the God in a Nutshell project. I go completely through this. These are artifacts from the very beginning of your history. These artifacts here predate by just a pinch even Nimrod himself. Here's the Enki standing right next to Inanna. This is one of your first. It's right here, Inanna. Here's Enki. He's coming out of his dimensional portal. You could call him Zeus. You could call him the 6th planet Saturn. Or you could just call him Satan, stepping right forth. And he's going to be the guide of your first sun god of Earth. And at his side is going to be our first little mother goddess right here with her little crowned horned helmet on top of her head, Inanna. She is striking a pose and getting to it.
It's very much like that. You're going to see these comparisons the rest of your life. Oh yeah, I understand this now. So what's all this about?
Yeah, what is this down here?
What is all this about? Come on.
Indeed, none of these legends or beliefs are likely new, and they string all the way back to the very beginning. I would like to bring us at the close of this video to the imagery right here at Athena's. Here's Athena's feet. Here's her big serpent right here. And I'd like to bring us to this string of characters at the very base of the idol of Athena. So, as I come up on Athena, I want you to notice right here in the center of all of the guys. So, and this would have been the way it was at her altar. This is the goddess Pandora. So this is where, right in the center of all the men, you've got right here in the middle, you have Pandora, and she's standing on Pandora's box. This right here, this is Pandora, and she's standing on Pandora's box. On either side of her, these are all men on both sides of her. That'll be important in a second. This is Pandora, and she's on top of her box. She's underneath the base of the idol of Athena, or ancient Inanna, or ancient serpent goddess. Now, when Pandora's box is opened, what comes out of Pandora's box is pestilence and plague. In fact, the only thing that does not come out of Pandora's box is hope. Hope is the only thing that does not escape from Pandora's box. Now, this symbolism is a throwback to the garden, to Adam and Eve in the garden. Right underneath the giant serpent and the serpent goddess, and the men on the side are standing there because Pandora, representing Eve, is going to open through the serpent Pandora's box, is what the symbolism has kind of been twisted into. And speaking of symbolism, when one thinks of Adam and Eve in the garden and an apple, you might think of Apple computers with the bite out of the apple. But this in the center, underneath the idol, the serpent goddess Athena, is Pandora. And from Pandora comes pestilence and plague, comes from the theology and religion of these idols.
Right. And I'm also not compared to Adam and Eve, but look, he doesn't open it. He gives it to her open, so similar. But all the evil escape. What's the one thing does not escape? Hope. There's always hope. That's what the hope chest is all about. Two more things. I'm going to answer all the questions. She's the tallest indoor sculpture in the Western world.
This is. I'd like to give a very special thanks to the guide services at the Parthenon exhibit with the Athena Idol or statue. The thing is 42 feet tall on the inside. Special thank you to the guide services at the Parthenon in Nashville, Tennessee. I'm going to be doing a follow-up to this particular video, which will at least be available for streaming for our partners over at godinthenutshell.com. In fact, I'm probably working on it at the moment you're watching this particular video. I want to go through, it was important to go through this part about some basis of some parts about the ancient gods and the ancient texts and their beliefs, because these tie in. Where you start at in the book of Genesis really comes full circle to where you end in the book of Revelation, and also ties into all of these ancient gods and beliefs that I'm arguing are still with you right to this very day. So in Revelation chapter 2 and 3, it goes through these 7 churches. Yohanan, or John, is told in a vision, he's told that to record the things which are, the things which thou hast seen, the things which are, those are the 7 churches, and then the things which come metatauta, or hereafter. Now, these 7 churches are commonly referred to as church ages. It's also taught that, well, within these 7 churches, there are many opinions on where we are at in biblical prophecy, but I want to go through a few of them. For example, number 4 down here is commonly compared to the Roman Catholic Church. That would be the Church of Thyatira, seen right here, number 4, the one just above it. And why I wanted to tie it in with that idol of Athena, it goes really well with Pergamus. That's number 3. That's the compromising church. That's also the physical location of the church of Pergamus. So each of these were physical churches that John wrote to. And each of these letters sort of represents church ages. But the physical church where Pergamus was, the compromising church, you're going to find a tie-in between right now where your world leaders meet, the place of CERN, and also what's described as the seat of Satan. I want to be talking about that. Skipping right over here to Thyatira. Well, Thyatira is a church, according to those pages, that really, really loves all of that pagan stuff. I would bring you here, speaking of imagery of the serpent, it really hasn't left you in so many ways. In fact, if you wanted to go to a service in a giant serpent, you could go no further than Vatican City and its audience hall, seen behind me. Now, many have looked at this strange artwork that's actually the backdrop in that audience hall that's shaped like a giant serpent. And this is a creepy looking image that's coming forth here. I guess the description the church gives for this is Jesus emerging forth from some type of nuclear explosion. Funny that that's the imagery we would want displayed on the back. But this image here, notice the waviness of the lines coming out this dimensional area and coming forth. And many people will take the head of this thing, and it makes a reptilian character. I'd like to talk about these churches, and specifically the sixth one, which I'm going to make an argument you may be in right now, and that may be a better thing than you might think. That has good news in it, if that be the case. I'm going to hit pause on that. But turning a second to this large sculpture, or whatever you may call it, back here at the Catholic Church, well, it honestly strikes me a great deal. There's a lot of different tablets that display Enki coming out of his dimensional portal. And on quite a few of them, you've got the wavy lines coming forth, and you've got Enki coming right through the midst, which looks nearly identical to what the Pope has got right here in his, I guess you would call it the Serpent Hall. There's the Vav on the back screen behind me. But speaking of prophetic times, many have called this time period that we're in an Exodus time period where the waters will part. I believe that, and I actually believe those 7 churches in Revelation tie into that. I'd like to make a case for that for you. Over on the God in a Nutshell project, I'm working on that now. But at this very moment, speaking of waters parting, I believe that the Lord laid on my heart to go through to do the best job on any film that I have ever done. And this film that's on the screen behind me, called The Rise of Joseph. Here's a copy of it in my hand. For partners over at God in a Nutshell, you can stream our entire Genesis series. That's roughly 7 or 8 films, plus a whole bunch of others. But that Genesis series walks you through all of the ancient texts. And the Exodus, seen on the screen behind me, well, the Exodus is just quite simply the Exodus. I'm Trey Smith of God in a Nutshell. I want to thank you for watching this video. I'm Trey Smith of God in a Nutshell. God bless every last one of you, all of you, and your families on the other side of the screen.